Hello everybody, Calamity here, and today we're going to do a character guide on Xingqiu. He is one of the strongest free-to-play characters that you can have, and he is definitely worth building as he is used in several of the best teams in the game, including the ones used in Spiral Abyss. So I'm going to go over everything you need to know about this guy, from his weapon options to his artifacts to his constellations, team comps, and just some basic combat showcases. There should be timestamps down below if you just want to navigate to a specific part of the video. But we have a lot to cover, and with that being said, let's get started with his talents. So Xingqiu has a pretty standard normal attack talent. Nothing fancy about it, no special mechanics to it. He'll just do some rapid strikes with his normal attack, and he has a charge up attack which does 2 rapid sword strikes. Again, not really anything you're going to use here. My advice is to just save your Mora, save your talent materials. I upgraded mine for some reason. You're not going to be using his normal attacks, basically. So let's move on. Next up, we have his elemental skill, which is called the Fatal Rain Screen. And this, while this skill looks pretty basic on the field, it actually has a lot going for it. So let's kind of quickly go over it. So the first thing that happens is when you hit enemies with your elemental skill, you're going to have these rain swords that kind of orbit your character, kind of like a shield. In fact, that's exactly what they are, because when you take damage while you have these swords orbiting around you, one of them will shatter and you'll take reduced damage. You also have increased resistance to interruption. So this means that small attacks from like Hilichurls, slimes are less likely to stun you and interrupt your, whoever character's combo. Although it's not as good as a shield though. So bigger enemies and stronger attacks are definitely still going to interrupt you. Keep that in mind. 20% of Xingqiu's hydro damage will also be converted into additional damage reduction. So building damage on Xingqiu actually also increases the damage reduction on his skills. So this makes your characters actually pretty tanky, especially against some of the scarier hits. And you can do this simultaneously, making him both an offensive and a defensive character at the same time. As you're investing in hydro damage bonus, you're also investing in damage reduction, which is pretty neat. You do have a maximum number of rain swords, which is 3, and your character will have the wet status, which means they have hydro basically when you use this skill. So do keep in mind, if you do run into some like cryo elements or electro, you are going to get a elemental reaction on your character. So you'll either get frozen if it's cryo, you'll get electro charged if it's electro. Now let's take a look at the skill attributes. You might see 2 multipliers here, and that's because the skill hits twice. I'm not sure how many of you knew that, but yeah, it does hit twice, and the second hit does do a bit more damage. And we can see the damage reduction ratios at 28%, and the swords will last 15 seconds, and this skill has a long cooldown of 21 seconds. This is probably one of Xingqiu's biggest weaknesses, is his long cooldown on the skill. Now, let's talk about the absolute best part about Xingqiu's kit. And that's going to be his burst called the Rain Cutter. So first and foremost, Xingqiu is going to make the maximum number of rain swords that you can have. So if you're at C0, it's going to be 3, as we read in the elemental skill. Second, your active character, it doesn't have to be Xingqiu, this can be any character that's doing normal attacks, will trigger consecutive sword rain attacks that deal hydro damage. You'll see tons of blue numbers as these swords hit enemies. Also keep note that these swords will focus the enemy that you are attacking. The swords don't really have a mind of their own. They won't split in different directions to different targets. They will all go to the same one, which makes Xingqiu really strong for single target damage. Also, the rain swords will remain at the maximum number throughout the ability's duration. So this means even if you take a hit, instead of the sword shattering, they're just going to stay. So during the entirety of the burst, you also are taking quite a bit of reduced damage, which is really nice. Now let's take a look at the skill's attributes. Now you might again see that skill attribute, I think that's pretty low, at 109% at level 12. And again, keep in mind that this is a skill that hits multiple times. It hits up to like 5 times. You'll see tons of blue numbers on the field, so it does a lot more damage than what you might think. Something I want to point out with his burst is that it does say normal attacks will trigger the burst. So keep that in mind when using him with characters. You want to use characters or main DPS characters that deal damage through normal attacks. Now there is a few special exceptions to this rule. think of Raiden Shogun. Now, Raiden Shogun's damage comes from her burst, where she pulls out a sword and does damage with that. That is still considered normal attack damage, so it will actually work with Xingqiu's burst. Now, take a character like Dia, who has a burst where it will not work with Xingqiu's because her burst counts as burst damage, not normal attack damage. It is a case-by-case thing, so you need to really test out the characters that you want to try out with Xingqiu. Also, he will not work with charge attacks, so you cannot use Xingqiu with teammates like Ganyu who rely on doing charge attacks for the majority of their damage. Next up, let's look at his passive talents. Now, I'm sure a lot of people actually forget this, but Xingqiu can heal. When a rain sword is shattered or its duration expires, you will heal the current character's HP based off Xingqiu's max HP, 6% of his max HP. Now, this is a very minor heal, nothing crazy, nothing to write home about, but it is just something to just keep note that he does heal a tiny bit. This is not something you should really invest into or try to do like a healing Xingqiu build. It's not really recommended. You definitely just want to build him for damage. Next up, we have Blades Amidst Raindrops, and this is a talent that is very easy to understand, just a straight up 20% hydro damage bonus increase. Now remember, that's also going to mean more damage reduction when it comes to using his skill. Next up, we have his passive talent, Flash of Genius. This is a really good one, especially early on, or actually throughout the whole game. I'm still using this talent myself when crafting character talent materials. He has a 25% chance of refunding a portion of the materials you used. He could be the difference between you getting a couple extra purple talent books and, well, not getting any at all. So next up, we're going to talk about weapon options for Xingqiu, and he has a lot. Seriously, he has a lot, and this is all going to depend on what kind of team you plan to run your Xingqiu on. This is something you really gotta figure out yourself and sort of pay attention to, because again, we all have different characters, we all have different team comp setups, and we all have different artifacts. So let's try to pick some generally good options for him, and we'll go from there. So if you decide to put Xingqiu on a team where he's getting not so much energy, maybe he's the only Hydro on the team, maybe no one else has a Favonius weapon on the team and stuff like that, he doesn't have a reliable source of energy other than himself, then that's when I can recommend using something like a Sacrificial Sword or a Favonius Sword. Both of these weapons are going to be perfect for him, giving him a huge chunk of energy recharge. You do want your Xingqiu to burst off cooldown consistently. This is very important as he is a sub off-field DPS, I should mention. So if he's not bursting, he's really become a big DPS loss, and that's not good. Now, if you are using him on a team where he does get energy more reliably, for example, the ever popular Raiden's International team, if you don't know how Raiden works, she gives a ton of energy to her teammates. But you can also pair him up with other characters like Dory, who also gives energy to her teammates as well. Or if you're using him with a battery like Yelan, if you have a C1 Yelan, she can use her elemental skill twice, which gives tons of particles there. Or Favonius Warbow on her. You know, things like that, where he's getting extra particles from anything other than himself. After, you test it out and yeah, he does burst off cooldown consistently, then you can actually try to opt in for a more damaging weapon. Now, obviously, this is going to be something that's sort of a premium option here, but if you do have a Primordial Jade Cutter, this is going to be amazing for him. Gives him a ton of crit rate, and it turns his HP into a damaging stat. You could also give him an energy blade, a Skyward Blade as well. This is also going to give him energy recharge. But because it's a 5-star weapon, it's going to give him a lot more damage. If you have a Mist Splitter Reforged, also a good option there. Honestly, I have my Xingqiu built with a support weapon, the Sacrificial Sword. And honestly, I'm happy with the way it performs. I've never felt the need. Like, of course, if I wanted to squeeze out more damage, sure. If I ever get another 5-star sword or something, I could give it to him. But he bursts off cooldown reliably for me, and he does good damage. Now, of course, And that's all I need him to do. So for me, I'm happy with where he's at. But if you want him to do more damage, consider giving him, a more damage-oriented weapon. I also try not to recommend the limited event weapons like the Festering Desire, because again, new players have no access to these weapons. But if you are an older player and you do have this weapon, Festering Desire is a good weapon for him. Another good option for him, if you are going to go for more of a damage build for him, is a Blackcliff Longsword. Remember, you can get this from Paimon's Bargains, and it rotates every month. So if you check the store and Paimon's selling the royal weapon set, then you'll have to wait till next month to get your hands on one of these. Xingqiu can take advantage of a lot of artifacts. Again, this is going to depend on how you want to build your Xingqiu. Now, I have my Xingqiu built heavily for lots of free energy recharge again. It's very important to me that he's able to burst off cooldown, so I gave him the Emblem of Severed Fate, and this is a artifact set that is generally advised for a lot of the sub DPS characters, and just an overall really, really good set for him. So if you're not really sure what to go after I give you these next couple options, just go with the Emblem of Severed Fate, just to make it easier for yourself. But let's look at why this artifact set is so good. So on the 2-piece effect, it gives him straight up energy recharge 20%. That's great. We need that. The 4-piece effect will increase his elemental burst damage by 25% of his energy recharge. This is even better because all that investing you're doing into energy recharge is now going to get converted into damage thanks to this artifact set. So you don't have to feel too bad about losing out on damage after investing in energy recharge so much. Now, if you're curious about, okay, I don't really want to give him the Emblem of Severed Fate, what other options do I have? Well, you could also give him a Noblesse Oblige, and the reason for this being that the 2-piece effect is a 20% elemental damage burst bonus, and the 4-piece effect gives him a team-wide buff of 20% attack. Now keep in mind that this artifact set does not stack, so if you do have someone else on your team already running this, then it's not going to be the best option for him. Now here's something you're not going to see a lot of older Xingqiu guides recommend, but I will. It's going to be the brand new artifact set that was released in this update, the Nymph's Dream. Now this is a brand new artifact set in 3.6, and I'll quickly go over what it does. So on the 2-piece effect, it gives you a hydro damage bonus of 15%. And the 4-piece effect works very similarly to the Polar Star 5-star bow, if you're not familiar with it. Basically, when you hit an enemy with your normal charged or plunging attacks, you get a stack. If you hit them with your elemental skill, that's another stack. And then your burst is going to be that 3rd stack. As you gain stacks, you're going to get increased attack percentage and hydro damage bonus at the same time. So we see here 3 stacks is going to be 25% increased attack percentage and 15% hydro damage, giving him basically a lot of free damage, and you're able to get at the very minimum 2 stacks very easily thanks to his elemental skill and his burst. Alright, now you might be looking at me and saying, hey, I'm a new player, I am nowhere near close to accessing that brand new domain. Do you have anything for the early game that I can give my Xingqiu until I get some better artifact? And I absolutely do. First and foremost, the Noblesse Oblige artifact set that I mentioned is fairly early into the game in Leeway, excuse me. So if you can get the 2-piece there. Now, another artifact set you could do is the Heart of Depth. This one also gives you a hydro damage bonus on the 2-piece, and you do not need the 4-piece bonus here from this, as it does not benefit Xingqiu in any way. So what you could do is mix and match. You could do 2-piece from the Noblesse, 2-piece Heart of Depth, or 2-piece Gladiator's Finale, at least until you get something worth using. What are the subsets that you actually want on your Xingqiu's artifacts? So let's talk about that next. For substats on your Xingqiu's artifacts, you're going to want crit rate and crit damage as your top priority, and work on balancing the 2 out. Next up, you're going to want to get energy recharge up until, again, this is going to differ from person to person. What team are you using him on, and how often can he get his burst back. If you can, whatever that threshold is for you, get enough energy recharge until you can burst reliably. If you're looking for a number to look for, I would say around 180% is a good start. Once you get his energy recharge needs, then other stats that you should look for are going to be elemental mastery and attack percentage. Now for the main stats on the other 3 artifacts for the sands, we're going to go for attack percentage here. Now again, depending on what weapon you're using and depending on how the energy recharge feels, if you feel like you need a big boost in energy recharge, by all means, use an energy recharge main stat sands here. Next up, we have the goblet, and this is going to be hydro damage bonus. Don't forget that this is going to double down as both offensive and defensive for Xingqiu because of the damage reduction, which I'm pretty sure at this point we've reached the cap. But regardless, hydro damage bonus is still going to be a really strong stat to go for. Now, obviously, getting something like this is going to take lots of farming and is not, easily obtainable. So if you don't have a good hydro damage goblet yet, I can suggest going for attack percentage or even elemental mastery, at least until you get a good hydro damage goblet. And finally, we have the circlet, which is either going to be crit damage main stat or crit rate. Whichever one you need more of, depending on what weapon you're using, depending on how your substats rolled. Just pick whichever one you need more of. And finally, we're going to talk about his constellations. Now, when I first played this game, which was around the time it launched, it was very easy to C6 Xingqiu. He was, he's again one of the first characters that was in the game at launch, and he's been in several limited banners since then. However, for a new player, I'm not sure how easy it is to C6 a Xingqiu these days with how many characters are in the game, but you definitely want to try to get those constellations, when he's back in a limited banner. With that being said, let's go over his constellation. So C1 is just going to increase the maximum number of rain swords you have by 1. So it's going to be 4. You can have up to 4 swords orbiting your character. You probably noticed it when I was using the elemental skill in showcasing his talents. C2 is a pretty good constellation. It's going to extend your burst duration by 3 seconds. This is going to be able to let you pull off another 1 or 2 sword attacks at most. And it's also going to decrease your opponent's hydro resistance by 15% for 4 seconds every time they're hit by the sword rain. That is pretty good. That is actually amazing. C3 and C5 are going to increase his burst and skill respectively. So this is means just more damage for our Xingqiu, which is great. C4 is kind of a weird one, but not completely useless. When you use your burst, your elemental skill will get an increase of 50% increased damage, which is nice, but for the most part, Xingqiu's rotation makes him do his skill first, then his burst, not the other way around. But rotations can change and stuff can happen during a fight, and maybe he got his burst back earlier than expected. So you could pop his burst and then do his skill to get extra damage there if needed. C6 is an incredible constellation, but it's also very vague and kind of confusing, but I'll try my best to explain it. So when you activate your burst and you do 2 sword attacks with it, the 3rd sword rain hit or rain attack is going to do enhanced damage. It says greatly enhances the 3rd sword's rain attack. We don't know by how much or by what. The second half of this constellation is where the good stuff is. So on hit, the 3rd sword rain attack will also regenerate 3 energy for Xingqiu. Now this might sound really insane if you're thinking that each sword counts as an individual attack, and unfortunately it does not. So what I mean is you need to see your swords all hit an enemy 3 times for you to get that energy recharge. It's not every time you attack you're getting 3 energy, unfortunately. If it did, that would be insanely strong. But it's still a decent chunk of energy. You're probably getting around 9 to 12 energy with Xingqiu from this constellation, which is again going to help those energy recharge needs, making them even lower. This is why when you're building energy on your Xingqiu, you have to factor in so many different things. Does he have a C6? Does he have a teammate with Favonius Lance on, or Favonius Weapon on the team? Is he with Raiden Shogun? Is there another Hydro on the team that maybe can generate tons of particles like Yelan? So when you factor in all this stuff, those energy recharge requirements are getting lower and lower and lower depending on what team he's being used in. So keep that in mind. C6 is great just for the extra energy alone that it provides for your Xingqiu to be able to burst even more consistently. Alright, let's talk about team comps with Xingqiu. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, he is a very versatile teammate and can work with a lot of teams. Whether that be, you know, any vaporized team of your choosing. He can also work in bloom teams. So here's an example of probably one of my favorite teams to use him in. It's with Hu Tao. However, you know, this is looking like a pretty expensive team with some 3 stars. I'm sure the, you know, new players are looking at this and thinking, whoa, what the heck? Can you show me something a little bit more realistic? And I sure can. So you can honestly replace Hu Tao with any Pyro DPS. So if you have Yoimiya, you can use Yoimiya in this team. You can also use Diluc if you have him built. I have him, but I just haven't built mine. You can even use him with Yanfei. Now you might be also looking at Yelan and thinking, whoa, that's a little also outside my budget. You know, sure thing. Let's get rid of some of the 5 stars here. Now this is starting to look a little bit more obtainable, right? A bunch of 4 stars. Zhongli is just here because when I do combat demonstrations, I don't like to get flung around or stunned. So he's a good character just to have, just so I can show you the character's actual abilities and combat stuff without me getting hit all the time because I'm terrible at dodging. So when using a team like this, see how Xingqiu's the only Hydro character we have? This is definitely a character, like, this is one of those times you definitely want a Sacrificial Sword or a Favonius Sword, because you definitely do want, you know, lots of energy for him so you can do that reliably. And once you activate his burst, swap quickly to your main DPS, which in this case is going to be Yanfei. And try to look at the blue damage. That's Xingqiu's damage right there. That was a weird charge attack. But you can see mine's doing 4,500 per sword. Per sword. And there's... you can at least see, what, 3 of those damage numbers? Oh, hey, he landed. Thank you. Alright, let's wrap up this fight. Oops, I'm disappointing all the Yanfei mains. Hey, I got an achievement. Let's do another boss fight with a different team. Now this one uses Bennett to showcase that Xingqiu's burst is affected by Bennett. So if we are standing on it, look at the swords doing 9,400 damage. There's 6,000 right there. And we can see the boss was pretty much down in just a matter of seconds. That's mostly because Yoimiya is really strong, but you can see that Xingqiu helps with applying tons and tons of Hydro, which is how I'm able to vaporize most of Yoimiya's attacks. Not to mention, again, the swords do really good damage on their own. You saw multiple instances of like 6,000, 9,000 damage, and the swords hit multiple times. Alright, we just wanted to showcase just one more team with Xingqiu, and that's going to be a bloom team. Oop. And I lost my Zhongli, so I'm going to get flung around here, but... need to get his burst up. Oh my goodness, I almost lost Traveler. Alright, let's try to get that burst up. We have the added damage from the bloom cores, the dendro cores, and Xingqiu's damage from the swords, and it's just... it can't keep up, and now this boss needs to do a split phase already, so we can hurry up here. Oh, I've been going for the wrong machine. Oops, that's okay. Oh wait, am I going for the wrong machine again? I am so sorry. We totally are scuffing this. Alright, so let's just finish this up before I embarrass myself even more. Probably not the best showcase there, but I just wanted to show again that you can use Xingqiu with just multiple teams, multiple teammates, different comps, even though I did 2 vaporized comps. Again, very versatile character, very strong character, and he does all of his damage off the field, so it's hard to really see the value in him when he works behind the scenes, but he's a really strong character. Hopefully I did a good enough job so that you could see that. And with that being said, that is going to be a wrap on this character guide. I hope I did a good job explaining everything you needed to know about him, but if there was something I didn't explain just well enough or clearly, please let me know in the comments down below. I'll do my best to try to help you out. But yeah, again, Xingqiu is just one of those characters. He's gonna, once you got him built and you got him set with a good artifacts, good weapon, good talent levels, he's gonna be useful for as long as you decide to play this game. I guarantee it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you like this kind of content. Let me know what character you'd like to see a guide for next. Maybe I can do one, but you know, better in a future video. But thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.